In this report, we looked at policy documents and we wanted to know how social science knowledge is reflected in policy documents. So the main target group for this report are obviously policymakers, but we also address social scientists that want to be heard of policymakers. What we have done in this report is that we identified first more than 100 documents, policy documents, strategy documents, from the EU level down to the member state level and down to the regional level, and analyzed in detail how are social science aspects in there. What we found in the analysis are a number of interesting things. The first thing is that the consumer has obviously made it into the center of policy documents. Before, consumers were more at the periphery and they were dealt with as a rather passive, responsive element there, but now they are in the center. Now policymakers want to focus on consumers. But what we also saw in the analysis was that many of the documents have a rather limited understanding of how consumers make decisions. We found basically two main assumptions that we see in many documents. One is that people lack information, so you just need to inform them better to change their choices, their energy choices. And the other assumption is that people make economic decisions, so that they choose the alternative that gives them the best economic benefit. And so you would need to create situations where you give good economic incentives. And what we know from social science is that, of course, those two things are relevant, but they are far from being the only things that impact people's decisions. And those other things, like social influence, like values, they are not reflected well in policy documents. We found some examples, but they are usually not included. The main conclusions we sit with after the analysis is that both policymakers and social scientists should change the way they talk to each other. So what we know is that there are many other things and that there is a lot of diversity in how consumers make decisions. So the culture has an impact. Social norms, group norms have an impact. Habits have an impact of what people do, and that needs to get into policy documents. And we need to open for that people in different regions of Europe have different ways of how they make energy decisions. But also social scientists should be stronger in giving good and clear advice to policymakers.